What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a good day as always. Today on the workbench, we've got a 3D printed low center of gravity chassis for the SCX24. So the main reason I went ahead and printed this chassis is because I picked up this VW Bug shell. Now it's a little bit shorter than most of the shells that I have. It's 1/24 scale, but it doesn't quite fit. So I went ahead and printed this. It's a little bit shorter. We're going to have to trim it down a little bit more on the back there, but I think it'll work pretty well. I'm pretty happy with how this print turned out. It turned out super clean. We're going to go ahead and pop the Muse carbon fiber low center gravity chassis off the SCX24 and get ready to install the new one. Alright, so I went ahead and pulled the old chassis off. We're going to go ahead and just leave all the parts as attached as possible to make it as easy to put back together. But we just got a bunch of pile of parts at this point, so let's go ahead and begin installing the low center gravity chassis. And with some editing magic, we got it all set up. Now I will say, with this specific motor set up and all the electronics we're running in here, we did have to modify things a little bit. I still can trim them back up some. I'm hoping it fits with that body. It might not. But as far as up here, we had to go ahead and remove the ESC and the battery mounting plates. We had to move those because with this brushless motor I did a video on recently, it's a little bit bigger and there's just not enough room to get that mounted up how it's designed. So that'll probably make it a little bit difficult to mount up all the electronics, but I'm sure we can figure a way to kind of jam those in there and get them all set up just to run this thing. Now I will say it is much lower than it was before, and for those of you unfamiliar with why you might want a low center of gravity chassis, it gets your center of gravity lower, so it makes it harder to flip over on side hills and things like that. It pretty much just increases stability of your rig when you're doing different trails. Now, we'll go ahead and see if this VW Bug body fits up. This will be another video even if it does fit, but it's going to be close. We're definitely going to have to trim some in the front and figure out how to fit that servo in there. And then the back of the frame rails we're going to have to cut off as well. That, or we could possibly trim off some of this body. I don't want to cut it too much and make it look unrealistic though. I personally am not a fan of that, so I'd like to keep it looking as much like a VW Bug as possible. Alright, so we actually lucked out and the electronics are the perfect size to pretty much just wedge between the frame rails, not add too much stress to it, but hold it tight enough to where they're not going to fall out. We went ahead and zip tied up some wires. You guys will actually probably be surprised by that. Most of my other builds are just jamming the wires under the body so you can't see them. This one we actually went ahead and zip tied them to the frame rails, so we're taking the build quality up with this build. But besides that, it actually went together pretty smoothly. I'll go ahead and toss a battery into this and we'll see how well it performs. The axle is rocked a little bit back. In real life, that caster angle would somewhat not really make it drive well on the road, but I think scaled down like this and just a crawler, it's not going to be a big deal. We still have decent turning radius. It didn't really impact that at all, and it still works. It just would not be ideal in a real life application. So now let's go ahead and get this thing on the course. So we're going to take it easy at first and just kind of see how this thing is feeling. It is very low though, so we did lose a decent amount of clearance. This is a similar issue you'll have with full-size rigs too. You pretty much get high-centered quite a bit on a setup like this. However, with these Muse isokinetic axles, the diffs are pretty big on those, and I get stuck on them pretty frequently anyway, so I've gotten pretty good at picking lines with this thing, and that should help a lot. Let's try some side hill obstacles here on the new part of our track and see how it does. I think the issue here mostly is going to be our tires gripping on the side, but it seems to be, that front tire's lifting, and it's crawling along pretty well here. It's actually doing better than I was anticipating it doing, and I'll go ahead and show you guys. It's at a pretty decent angle there. Now let's hit one of my favorite lines. We got the bridge with all the rocks on it to flex on, and then we've got the downhill descent. Now we are actually rubbing a little bit on the frame to the rocks, which we don't usually do, but like I said, you're going to lose some clearance with a low center of gravity setup. Head right down these rocks. This thing's pretty stable. Now we'll see if we can get up on the side here. I don't want to go too high because then we're going to pretty much, that's what I was expecting to happen. We pretty much slipped off the rock. It didn't really roll until we fell off the side, so it's hard to say if it would have flipped. Give it one more try. Angle-wise, it's holding up well. It seems to be when it falls off that edge is when we're losing it. It's not necessarily the angle, it's just the force of it falling on the side of its tire. Alright, so we got it back on the workbench. Let's go ahead and do a final rundown on my thoughts on this setup. Now I do like it as far as how stable it is. It's definitely an improvement over the last chassis and definitely a huge improvement over the stock setup. Now every setup is going to have pros and cons, and this one's cons will be that you don't have as much clearance. I'm sure we could tune it a little bit better with some different links, some different suspension setups. However, with this specific setup right now, it does lose quite a bit of clearance underneath of it. I think maybe if we bent some links up higher and maybe shortened where the skid is, it might be decently more capable that way. But as it sits, I would definitely still rock the Muse chassis. It's definitely more capable in my opinion. Now we just got to figure out if we can fit this VW bug shell on it. That'll be a problem for another video. So as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.